You're listening to Language Nerds Do Earth, the podcast about linguistics, culture, travel, and how they're all connected. Now, it's time for your language nerd hosts. One in China, one in Spain. It's Patrice and Rachel.
Hi everybody, I'm Patrice.
And I'm Rachel.
And welcome back to Language Nerds Do Earth.
Woo-hoo. This week we're going to be talking about travel emergencies and what to do if you have one. And also we're going to try to give you some tips on how to prepare yourself so that hopefully they don't happen.
We have some special guests for this episode, and they are our moms.
Yes, indeed. We've got a little bit of everything just between our two moms. So.
Yeah. And then we have, of course, a wonderful lost in translation moment from Emilio.
Right.
But before we get into anything, we have a new review. Do you want to read it for us, Rachel?
Sure. So this is from Emma Salsa. She said, "Such an interesting podcast. Once again, these two women have provided great information on travel and language, and with such entertaining presentation that makes listening a pleasure. Keep it up, ladies."
Aww.
Nice.
So nice. Thank you, Emma Salsa. Thank you.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, before we start listening to these very entertaining stories, let's get into our language news of the week.
Yeah. So, we were looking at this article this week about how native English speakers are some of the worst communicators.
Yeah. So, this one was kind of surprising, but then not surprising at all to me. Basically, what it said was, especially when communicating with non-native speakers of English, native English speakers tend to be very vague with their English. So they use a lot of words with dual meanings, they use flowery language, they use a lot of slang, and it actually cost one company millions of dollars because businessman in the U.S. sent an email to a guy in another country, and one of the words was industry specific, but it had two different meanings. And the guy on the other end assumed the opposite meaning. Unfortunately, they didn't give us the word, which I think is a total bummer.
Yeah, I wanted to know what it was too.
Yeah. At first I was like, was it literally? Because literally now means literally and figuratively, right? But it was industry specific, so probably not. But yeah, what did you think of this?
I totally related to it.
Yeah.
And I also find as a teacher, I've learned a lot of this stuff too.
Yeah.
How to speak to elementary speakers of English, how to speak to intermediate speakers, and it's not the same as I would talk to my friends who are native speakers.
Oh yeah, definitely. You learn how to dumb down your vocabulary a lot and use shorter sentences. I think we've talked about that actually when we did our episode on traveling somewhere where you don't speak the language.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, but...
And not using so many phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are basically verbs, something like turn up. Turn up. So turn up has maybe like 3 different meanings.
Yeah.
And none of them is the literal meaning of turn. So when you add the preposition, it makes it a different meaning from the verb.
Yeah, I never thought of how terrible that phrasal verb is.
Yeah.
But anyway, we found a list of some words that have dual meanings that we can just choose a few from if you want and then move on.
Literally?
Yeah.
We've kind of already talked about it. Variety?
Yeah, like it can mean a specific kind and then a bunch of something.
Exactly. Clip? Which can mean to cut apart or to attach together.
Yep.
To dust.
Oh, yeah.
Which can mean to remove dust or to sprinkle something with a powder.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's awful.
So kind of the opposite things.
Maybe it was a company that worked with dust. Probably not.
Consult can mean to seek advice or to give professional advice.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, English is hard, guys.
Yeah. And so basically, there's a Swiss man named Michael Blattner who came up with this kind of basic English that's good to be used in business situations.
I thought it was interesting. The article said native English speakers usually dominate business meetings 90% of the time. Mm-hmm. It could be like a business person problem too, maybe.
Yeah, and it can also be a problem if the culture that the person's from is afraid of losing face. So they won't ask what the person really means. If they don't understand, they'll just kind of pretend that they do.
Oh, yeah.
And they might actually choose to go with like a different company, like a German company or an Italian company that is easier to understand.
Right. So
instead of like an English or an American company.
That's so interesting. So maybe cultural sensitivity training is in order for some of these companies.
Yeah, as well as just learning to speak in a more neutral and more simple way.
Right, exactly. Really interesting article. We posted about it on Instagram. Somebody was like, oh, really? I would assume that native English speakers would be better at speaking to non-native speakers of English, but I think in a lot of cases, they're definitely not.
Yeah.
They're used to just going somewhere and being able to communicate. A lot of people who don't speak another language especially don't really understand the nuances of slang or idioms or whatever, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, I'm sure there'll be like a lost in translation moment about that sometime. I'm making a prediction.
Cool. So let's move on to our main topic for the week.
Yeah, so this week we interviewed our moms. So, yeah, do you want to tell us about what you talked about with your mom?
So this is my mom. Would you like to start by introducing yourself?
Yes, I am Rachel's mother. My name is Sally Avery. And
Mom.
I'm in Tennessee right now.
And you guys have traveled a lot together.
Yeah, so we used to travel a lot when I was growing up, especially. I think we would travel about 4 times a year or something.
That's
together.
awesome.
Yeah.
I started traveling in earnest around the time I got divorced from your dad, which was in 97. We've been to, how many? About 30 states?
Something like that, yeah. I think you've been to, you've been to more than me. I've been to like maybe 26 or something.
Okay. And then we went to Germany and Austria and Italy and Dominican Republic. And
so my mom has some ADD issues that we talked about, and how that's a problem for her. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of her stories kind of relate to that.
Yeah.
Yes, that's really a big problem. with a big problem with traveling, losing things.
Yeah.
Getting lost, not paying attention to what's happening.
Yeah.
Yes.
Losing your documents and plane tickets or whatever.
Yes. My poor child has had to be in charge of all documents since she was about 7 years old.
As a result, I'm really good at it.
Yeah, and I'm no better. When we were in Austria, I lost the ticket for the tram, like from the place we bought the ticket to the line, which was like 10 feet away.
Pretty typical, I would say. So, if somebody else were traveling with ADD, how would you recommend that they organize themselves?
To try to keep the documents always in the same place, like in your backpack or carry-ons or whatever. That's been useful when I can do that. Mm-hmm. I keep things stored in my phone, but then I also have write it down because sometimes I can't access it on my phone, or my phone's dead, or
Yeah, of course.
and I like to have it an extra idea of what we're doing, the itinerary.
Mm-hmm.
I've used that app TripIt,
Yeah.
and I got the pro version because it's very useful in keeping all of the confirmation numbers and flight numbers and everything in one place, so I can access it.
But of course, then they're also, missing flights due to unavoidable situations,
Right.
or just things out of your control as well.
Yeah. When you travel a lot, you're going to have a lot of incidents, I think.
Yeah. And there are going to be things that you just can't control. So.
Yep, for sure. Well, so first you start talking about when her bag was stolen in Guatemala, but you weren't on that trip, right?
No,
Yeah.
I wasn't.
When I first arrived to Guatemala, I came by myself, and I was meeting some friends there. I was very careful, but still, at the end of the trip, which was about 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks, I was on a chicken bus, or one of the local buses, but we were traveling long distance, and right before we stopped, somebody grabbed my backpack and jumped off the bus with it while we were moving.
Mm-hmm.
In the backpack was my passport, about $400, my favorite earrings, my favorite shoes. I mean, the worst part of it was for me the passport, because I needed to get home the next day, or maybe 2 days later. And so I had to call the embassy, and a woman agreed to meet me on her day off on Sunday to get me traveling papers so I could get back home. Yes.
How did you get in touch with her?
I always have trouble with phone calls in other countries, but it was somebody helped me use the telephone, and I called the U.S. Embassy from Antigua, and the embassy was in Guatemala City, so then somehow I got through to her that way.
Mm-hmm. And this is quite a few years before smartphones, too, so.
Right. It was
2000.
99 or 2000, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I can't believe that the woman met her on her day off.
Yeah, well.
She got really lucky.
But she always gets lucky, so.
It worked out, and I think always when people see you having a hard time, or at least this has been my experience, when people that are either other travelers or people who live in the area that I'm traveling in, they see that I'm having a hard time, they come in and help me. I mean, that's just my experience. And I have never had an experience that I trusted somebody to help me who then hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
That's not been what's ever happened to me.
I think there's something to that.
Definitely.
And so she talks about that as well, how even though sometimes things maybe aren't ideal or something, if you just kind of change your thinking about it, it can turn into a really positive experience.
Just try to be open to whatever comes up. Try to be open for experiences. And I have met some really wonderful people by these mishaps. And I think if you stay open to the experience, that your traveling will be a lot happier.
Mm-hmm.
I think that outlook is really cool and important.
Yeah, and she actually taught me a lot about that while we were traveling.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I would be in a grumpy mood, or like, oh, this is such a pain, or just this is not going to work out. And she's like, you know what, it's fine. We're going to go have a nice dinner. We're going to go do something fun. And
yeah.
If we had been on that flight, then we would have missed this entire day.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Goose pimples. But I really liked the story about Berlin. So do you remember this one?
I do.
Yeah.
I do remember this. You want to talk about Berlin?
Oh yeah, Berlin. Berlin was really my very lowest point traveling.
That was a rough one.
It was rough. I totally did not function at all when that happened. So the first thing that happened was, of course, sitting on the bus, and the bus stops. And then we got a taxi. the more anxious I get or the more disorganized I feel, the worse my ADD gets. And so the first thing that happened was I left my money pouch in that taxi. And so
How
we
much
had,
money?
I guess, probably just a couple hundred. That was before euros, so it was a couple $100. It was maybe 400 D-marks. But it was the money that we had, and I can't remember, credit card probably. I think credit card also. So I just remember we had no money and we had no way of getting money. And so we were leaving the next day. We had eaten, but the next day we were leaving maybe in the morning. So we went, and the next day in the morning we went and put our backpack in a locker at the train station and came back. It was gone. And that had my camera, had our return train tickets.
And the rest of the money, right? Any other money that we had?
But anything else that we had, the value was there. So then it was like trying to find out how to reach my friend who was German, who was in a city a few hours away. And I didn't know how to use the telephone. And I went to the tourist information place, and this woman was leaving, and I just was like holding her arms like, no, you can't leave, you have to help me. I don't know how to dial the phone, you have to do it. so she helped us, but that was the worst for me because of you mostly. I mean, it made me much more anxious because you were with me and you were about 7. And I remember saying to you at one point, like getting down to your eye level and just holding you and like, you have to help me. I can't do this. And so you did. You stepped up and you like helped me we couldn't find the tourist information place again, and you helped me find that. And we eventually got hold of my friend. But it was like, we can't afford anything to drink, but if we could, you can't have anything because we can't afford the toilet. We can use the toilet on the train later, but not now. So my friend got us return train tickets reissued, and our passports were not with us, which that was the good thing.
Yeah.
So that was the one thing we didn't lose.
So that was pretty rough. I remember just being really, really thirsty.
Yeah, I know, and I kept saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, honey. We're hungry, we're thirsty, we can't eat, we can't drink.
It was like we didn't get home until the evening or something too, right?
Right, and I think I had maybe $5 or something in my pocket, and that's what we had for the day. So it's like, okay, we have to spend this wisely.
Yeah.
We'll get some bread and maybe some water. Oh, that was that one.
So I think like at that point maybe Germans, there wasn't as much English in Germany as there is today.
Yeah.
And probably not as tourist friendly as it is now. Because now you go to Germany, if you lost your ticket, they would probably be like, oh, let me help you with that.
Yeah, I definitely remember like fewer people speaking English at that time.
Yeah.
And yeah, she was fairly new to traveling at that point too. So I think since then she's gained a lot of experience.
Definitely, yeah. And then you have the experience in Dallas too, and you missed your flight.
I remember when we were in Dallas for your grandmother's 90th birthday, no?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yes.
That was the occasion. Okay. And my aunt was taking forever. And in the end, she was taking us to the airport, and in the end, it took so long that we missed the flight. And we couldn't fly out.
Because it was right after 9/11 also, so like they were real strict about, you have to be here this much time ahead, and if you have to check your luggage, blah, blah, blah. You have to be with your luggage, all that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that made it impossible for us to make our plane.
Yeah.
Which we missed by like 5 minutes,
yeah,
actually.
It was really, really close. But we flew out the next day or something, right?
There was a 12-hour window that we had to wait for the next flight.
Oh, okay. But I remember you were like, well, let's have fun. Let's go to the zoo. So...
Yeah, it was also, you were in a pretty bad mood about it at first, and I said, well, let's just figure out all the reasons we're happy we missed our flight. And then we just thought about, okay, well, it's not rush hour when we get back to Knoxville, or It's maybe we can find a restaurant that's not a chain restaurant, or maybe we can go to the aquarium we didn't see yet. So we had a very nice day. Then we just got on the bus, went downtown, and had a really nice afternoon in Dallas.
And I feel like I've learned a lot by having those experiences with you about not getting too worked up about it and not like, oh man, this sucks and this is horrible, and just like, okay, you know, these things happen. It really doesn't matter, and maybe it'll be a little more inconvenient, or maybe not.
Or maybe you'll have an experience that you weren't able to have because you are stuck in a place, or meet somebody that you might not have met. Or I think generally, if you keep your attitude good and you stay flexible, I think you have to be flexible if you're going to be traveling, because things don't work out.
And then the Dominican Republic.
Good, and you stay flexible.
She actually told me the story when I was in Oak Ridge in December.
That trip was kind of like the Murphy's Law trip. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong.
Oh yeah, the DR.
That was just one of the most unfortunate trips ever.
Yeah, so everything happened on that trip. Our luggage did not arrive until day 6 of our 9-day trip. We rented a car, and it's very, very challenging to drive in the DR. The people just do whatever they want, and whoever's the most aggressive gets to go at any light or any kind of intersection. And the roads are so bad, and people ride on their motor scooters with no lights on, and 4 people on them, and a baby and woman riding the side saddle, holding a mattress. So it's pretty crazy. But when I rented the car, they said, "Do you want to buy tire insurance?" And I thought, there must be some reason they're asking that question, so I must get it. And sure enough, we had 2 flat tires, I think. 2?
Yep, 2.
On the way there, and it took about a day and a half to get where we were going, which was this little village without resorts. And it was really beautiful. But
lost luggage, flat tires, nobody there when we went to check into our housing. Still no luggage for many days.
We had nothing.
It's pretty unfortunate.
And you were still like 12 or 13 or
I think it was 13.
Yeah.
But when we got to our place where we were staying, this little apartment, there was no one there. And so it's like, okay, now what? We'll find an internet cafe and see if we can find a place. And in the internet cafe, we met Yaji. Was that his name? Anyway, he was from Pakistan, I think.
Yes.
And he spoke English and Spanish and French and German. And he said he knew the person who owned that place. He had a key to it. So he took us there. He helped us make our beds. And then he was just like, he worked as a tour guide, but he had free time. So he just was our personal tour guide the rest of the time.
Yeah.
He just took care of us. And we had a rental car. So he would just go with us someplace, and we'd take his tour, but not really pay for it. We did do a couple of his tours that he had already arranged. And he called the airport for us every day trying to find out where our luggage was. And there was a woman who was house sitting for the apartment where we were, and she had all these clothes for Rachel, but none for me. They were small. So just getting clothes and bathing suit for... I did learn, don't ever travel to an island or a beach place without the bathing suit in your carry-on.
Yeah, that was a good lesson. Yeah. And probably bring some other things too.
Right. Oh, but then the ADD strikes again, and I locked our keys in the trunk. Remember when we were running?
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
A little bit late for the plane, and so these guys come over, and they're like broke into the trunk somehow, and
I completely
helped us get our keys out.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean, and then on the way home, you're not going to be able to leave New York once you get there, so then we had to stay in New York.
Yeah.
So,
and then
it's weather related, so sorry, the bill's on you.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
Okay.
That was, it's funny because I think about that trip and it feels dark to me. I mean, there were wonderful things about it, like we met those guys from Germany and they invited us for their birthday dinner and the guy's birthday dinner, and that was really fun.
And Yajin was really great.
And he was great. Everything we did with him was really great. And but overall, it feels dark to me. And you said, "Oh, I loved it there." I remember several years later, you're like, "Oh, I loved it there."
Yeah, it does have that kind of dark feeling, though, for sure. So, is there anything you think you could have done differently, or how you could have prepared that would have avoided some of these things? Maybe if your passport had been in a different place.
Well, because the last thing I did before I fell asleep on that bus was put my passport in there. I had it on my body all the time in Guatemala except for that time. And we're going to be on the bus for like 3 or 4 hours, so I just put it in the backpack as the last thing. But as I put my things up there, I saw everyone else was strapping their backpacks to the wire shelf.
Okay.
And I did not do that. I thought, wonder why they're doing that. Well, that's why they were doing it. So one thing I did learn is to kind of see what everybody else is doing and do what they do and do what they do. So if everybody else is keeping their backpacks in their laps and holding on to them, I do that.
Why. Yeah, there's a reason.
If I see they're strapping their backpack on, there's probably a reason for that, and not because the mountains are going to make it fly off of there.
Well, this has been super fun.
It has been.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Love your podcast.
Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing some stories with us and some insights.
You are very welcome.
So you want to introduce your mom?
Yeah, sure. So this is my mom, and she still really likes to travel.
Hello, I'm Fran. My friend here and daughter, Patrice, asked me to tell you about travel mishaps. Okay, so there are many travel mishaps, but most of them involve being delayed for a plane and a plane being canceled and a plane delay and just taking forever. And I've accepted that as part of travel.
And I remember when I was traveling with her as a kid, I was always like, something always goes wrong, But she kind of puts it well, she says.
Once you accept that, travel is a lot easier.
I totally agree.
My advice is try not to be too tired when you just start traveling. Try to get plenty of rest. And
that's a good idea.
And try to plan in an extra day, so you aren't exhausted when you go back to work.
Yeah. I think so. And it seemed like she did a good job of kind of learning from her experiences and like, okay, that happened once, but next time I'll do this differently.
Right. So for example, we're in Barcelona, and it's the first time I've ever traveled out of the country. I was about 13, so this is 2001, and we get in the taxi from the airport. We get out of the taxi, go into our hotel, and she realizes she doesn't have her wallet.
All my credit cards in my wallet, and fortunately my passport was there, and you had your passport still.
Yeah, it's amazing, actually.
Yeah, and we actually had some money, which was nice, but we didn't have any credit cards, or I had very limited cash. We tried calling the taxi company. The people at the hotel were really nice, and they tried to help us. But
and you spoke Spanish. You were really brave with your Spanish, trying to explain what happened.
Even though my daughter kept making fun of me.
I know. I was like 13, and I was like, why are you trying to speak another language? It's embarrassing.
I know.
Now look at me.
And you wouldn't even speak it. I was like, why don't you talk then?
Yeah.
Adolescents. Help me
right.
out here. So anyhow, we were like wandering around Barcelona without money. And here I was probably 41 or 40. And so I called my father and asked him to wire me.
So we go to Las Ramblas, this big street in the middle of Barcelona that has...
Yeah, which is like the main touristy place.
Yeah, of course. And then I think that's where she was like walking in and out of the Western Union, calling my grandfather on a payphone.
And you were calling Pop-Up from a payphone, too.
Oh, was I calling him from a payphone asking to collect calls? I think things are different now because of the internet and smartphones.
Yeah.
I mean, that was before all that. So you don't know how lucky you millennials have it.
Yeah.
One of the things I learned was that you need to know your credit card call companies. I mean, now you just get on the internet. You probably find an internet at the hotel desk and find the number,
Right.
the international number of the card, and call with your social security number and ID. And the good thing is that credit card companies are responsible for any fraud. So if somebody tries to charge something.
So we just waited for the bank to send us a new credit card in Barcelona. So kind of like your story in Berlin, but not quite as dire as that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of crazy.
Cool. And then she also talked about a different trip to Botswana.
Yeah.
It was more airline related.
Right. And I wasn't on this trip. She took this trip with my brother.
Okay, this was like one you haven't heard. So this is where I learned another lesson, that when you're booking a airline ticket, just use one itinerary because this is what happened.
Apparently, they were going to Botswana. They booked a flight from Tennessee to Philadelphia that was a direct flight, and then they had 5 hours on the ground, and then they had a separate itinerary booked from Philadelphia to London, stay in London for a day, and then a separate itinerary from London to Botswana. But on the first leg of the flight, they got grounded in Virginia.
For some reason, on that flight from Knoxville to Philadelphia, the plane got grounded like in Richmond, Virginia, and just sat on the air. They said it was weather related, but I don't know. So it sat on the tarmac for about 5 hours in Richmond, and we got to Philadelphia like an hour or two after the flight from London was supposed to leave. Now I was trying to save money. Like what I did was I used my frequent flyer miles to get to Philly, and then I booked a different flight from Philly to London.
No.
And so then I was stuck, and so the itinerary from London to Botswana was one ticket. So I was like really scrambling because I knew that if I couldn't get to London, then I wouldn't be able to get to Botswana. But while I was sitting on the tarmac in Richmond, I was like calling the airline, finding out if they could do anything. But since they didn't book the flight, it was two different itineraries, they wouldn't guarantee me another seat from Philly to London because we just missed the flight. But anyhow, so I got to Philly and I was calling the airline. They couldn't do anything. So, and we didn't have any place to stay in Philadelphia. It was, by the time we got to Philly, it was like 10 at night.
Oh, no.
We were supposed to get there at like 6 or 5.
Oh, no.
And so we took a taxi to my father's house, who lives outside Philly, in like in the middle of the night, and spent the night there. But then I got up at 4 and tried to figure out what to do because I was like, well, I can't do anything. And I finally found tickets that I had to pay for the next morning through Toronto to London, and from there we caught the plane from London to South Africa, which then from there we got to Botswana. But it ended up costing me probably an extra $2,000 or something like that. But we ended up getting to South Africa and then eventually Botswana and having an amazing time and going to like a remote safari type place, and it was great.
You kind of went over it, but what do you think you would have done differently?
So first of all, I recommend keeping your credit cards with your passport when you're traveling and like going into areas you don't know, especially when you first get there. Especially places known for pickpocketers, like Paris or Barcelona, like big tourist areas.
For sure.
And then the second thing I would recommend is never buy separate itineraries on airlines.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to change them. They won't honor the fact that you missed the flight.
Right, exactly.
So
It's not their fault in that case. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us.
Well, I think that's pretty much it for our moms.
Okay.
Thank you, moms.
Thank you.
And if you want to see pictures of us traveling with our moms, they're on Instagram.
Yeah.
And then Rachel talked to her aunt.
My aunt's name is Cindy, and she works as the CEO of a credit union in Indiana called NACO.
So she gives us some really good advice. First, obviously call your bank if you're going out of the country, and make sure that your bank has the right phone number on record for them to call you. That was really good advice.
I would also recommend that you have more than one card that you can use in case you lose one or one gets shut down for unusual activity. You don't want to just have one that you can use.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I have another recommendation.
Okay, great. Go for it.
I personally recommend using a credit card instead of a debit card.
Okay.
Because a debit card is the direct link to your checking account. And if somebody gets a hold of it or something funny is going on, they can wipe out your account. And there you are, out of the country, unable to really do anything about it. For us, we try to get the money back in our members' accounts the same day, but most financial institutions don't do that. You may be several days without your money.
Right.
If you use a credit card, then, the only hit is that you can't use your credit card anymore.
But you still have probably another credit card that
yes, you should have.
Use.
So back to another recommendation I have, which is to take out an international plan with your cell phone provider so that if your financial institution needs to contact you, they can.
Okay.
For example, I looked online and I have a Verizon account, and Verizon has a travel pass plan that is $5 to $10 a day depending on where you're going. So, for example, if you're going to Peru, like your mother did, it's $10 a day, and you're only charged on the days that you use your device abroad.
Oh, okay.
So that seems like pretty cheap insurance to be sure that you can resolve any issues that you might have.
Do you have any other recommendations how people could just make their lives a little easier in case something did happen?
I would say I think it's best if you're working with a smaller financial institution, say a credit union, where you have a relationship with someone, because that way if you have an issue and if you have a way to contact that person directly, they will do more to help you than someone at a call center.
Right.
And another thing, that your mom experienced, her financial institution is huge, and every time you call, you get a different person, and they have to follow privacy laws. They're less able to do things for you because they don't know you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I've been on that end of the stick, too, where you're just trying to resolve a problem, but you end up talking to like 4 people, and you have to re-explain every time, and
Right.
if you're calling internationally, then that's going to be expensive.
Right. And if your phone doesn't have international calling, then they can't reach you. You can't reach them. You can use a chat feature if they have it on their website. But again, I think your mom had a problem every time she tried to log in with her iPad. Her iPad had to be revalidated, which means they either have to send you a text message or an email, which you can't get on your phone.
Right.
So there are some challenges that are difficult to overcome.
But then she said something really good that I never thought of about ATMs.
Oh, I was going to ask you about ATMs.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on those?
Well, it's a good way to get money out of your account with your debit card.
Mm-hmm.
I think your mom actually lost hers in the ATM, so I'm not sure what happened there.
She told me like she just didn't get it out or something, and then it went back in the machine. I don't know.
Yeah. If you don't do that, then the machine captures it. And, if you know the financial institution, you can go inside and tell them that the machine ate your card, and they will give it to you if you can verify who you are. But I think hers was more of a little, like, Quickie Mart ATM machine.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, which I would avoid. I would try to find one at a financial institution if that was an option.
So those are probably a bit more secure too, right?
Yes. Yeah, they are.
I think maybe I got my card information stolen from a one that my mom and I both used in Mexico.
We see that happen a lot.
It was like 3 months later, and I was in Spain.
Yeah, it takes them a while sometimes to duplicate your card information, and by then you're not looking for anything on your account, and your financial institution doesn't know about it, so they can quickly take all your funds, and then you're going through the process of trying to get them back from the financial institution.
Oh.
They probably had some kind of skimmer on the machine, and then they stole all of the card information from all of the people that had used it, and then they sell it on the dark web, and, there's some time that passes before those things show up.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much for talking
Certainly.
to us.
I am happy to do it.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you later.
Great. Thanks, Rachel.
And the other thing that you guys were talking about, international phone plans, and you asked if the one that she was looking at for Verizon included data.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she said that it did. So it included text, call, and data, but it only charged you basically if you used it during the day.
Okay. Nice.
So you don't have to pay for it like every day.
That is pretty nice.
Yeah.
That's Verizon. Although, shout out to T-Mobile. They have international phone plans. I think I was paying $50 a month per person for my husband and me for 4G LTE in the US and anywhere all over the world, basically.
Yeah, whenever I've traveled with people who have T-Mobile, it seems like a pretty good thing.
Yeah, I used it when I went to Germany a few years ago. I was video chatting with Seth. I had really fast service, and that was really nice. So
cool.
Yeah. Thank you so much to our moms and Aunt Cindy for your input.
Yes, you gave some really good advice and a lot of good insight into what you've done when problems have arisen.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, what we're going to do is we're going to throw up a really good list of travel emergencies and what to do when you hit any of them on our show notes as a reference. So
cool.
Yeah.
So now, do you know what time it is?
What time is it, Rachel?
It's time for our Lost in Translation story.
Woo! Okay, so this week, our Lost in Translation moment is from Rachel's boyfriend, Emilio. And let's see what he has to say.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emilio. I've been listening to the podcast, and I wanted to share my Lost in Translation moment. Actually, I have two to share. The first one, courtesy of my mom. You see, due to work matters, she used to travel a lot to the US. The thing is that she doesn't speak a bit of English. Yeah. So one day she was talking to one of her customers when a lady came in with her son. The kid tried to start a conversation with my mom, but she told him, I don't speak English. She didn't know that sentence. So the kid said something, I'm sorry. My mom had no clue what he said, but she remembered that word because she thought, did this kid just call me zorra? Zorro in Spanish means fox. So zorra means female fox. But in Spanish, when that expression is used, it is a detrimental term for prostitute. So my mom got a little bit scared, but then she was explaining that the kid was actually very polite. The second one did happen to me. And I think it's interesting because sometimes you can also have lost in translation moments in your own language. I'm from Venezuela, and I moved to Spain a few years ago. And in a going out, I was talking to a couple friends. One of them is a lady. And I think, I don't remember if she was saying that she was going to go to her place. She was leaving, and I lived some way, on the way. And, well, the thing is that she said that she was leaving. So I asked her, ¿Quieres que te dé la cola? The literal translation of this is, would you like me to give you the tail? In Venezuela, specifically, this means, would you like me to give you a ride? I know, it's weird. It doesn't make any sense, but well. But in Spain, they use the word cola, tail, as a slang for the penis. So basically, I asked her, would you like me to give you the penis? And well, if you're wondering, no, Mr. Bond didn't get the girl this time. Those are my Lost in Translation moments. I hope you like them. Keep up the good work. Until next time.
Thank you, Emilio, for that story. It's classic.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really funny. Your mom kind of thought that kid called her a slut.
A fox. A slut fox. Yeah, I was cracking up.
And the phrase,
Dar la cola.
yeah, it's really kind of random. So.
Yeah. Although it's kind of random. It's kind of like the classic coger, right, in Spain.
Yeah.
So in Spain, it's to get. It's used very, very commonly. Get a taxi, get a bus, get something out of the fridge, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then in Latin America, it is the most derogatory term for sex that you can possibly use.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for sending in your story. It was really good.
Yeah, thank you, Emilio. If you have a lost in translation moment, please send it to us.
Yes.
We know you're dying to share it, so just do it. You can send us voice memo to languagenerdsdoearth@gmail.com or fill in the contact form on our website. Just send us a comment. We'll find it. Or write us on one of our social media channels. We'll find you.
Cool. So I think that's pretty much all we've got for the week.
Yeah.
So let's wrap it up.
Yep.
Follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, and also subscribe to our blog at languagenerdsdoearth.com. We like to post at least like once a week about our experiences living and traveling abroad.
Yeah, and don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes, please. It really helps people find us so that we can reach more of an audience, and that audience can learn about the world or what to do when they lose their passport.
Yeah.
And if you have a travel emergency that you'd like to tell us about, we'd love to hear from you. You can just leave a comment on the episode post on our website.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure everybody has at least one story, so
yeah,
we'd like to hear some other people's experiences.
Yeah, how you dealt with it. What kind of crazy stuff the airline told you when your flight was canceled. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah, thanks everybody. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.